Welcome back to Super Doc Stories. I'm here with Dr. Carolina Sueldo. She is a fertility specialist and the founder of Sabo Fertility Center in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Excuse me. Welcome, Dr. Sueldo.
Thank you so much.
Sueldo.
Thank you for having me. Yes, that's okay. That's okay.
Sorry. I'm
That's
getting
all right.
Sabo and Sueldo confused in my mouth. So you are an OBGYN by training, I assume?
Yeah. So I did medical school and then I did 4 years of OB-GYN and then I did a 3 years fellowship in REI, so reproductive endocrinology and infertility.
Awesome. That's a long journey.
It
And
is
this was
long.
all your training, was it in Florida?
No. So I did medical school in Buenos Aires in Argentina, where
Okay.
my family's from. I did high school. So we moved when I was 15, I should preface. So we moved when I was 15. I did high school and then I did medical school there. And then I came back for my post-grad training. So
Nice.
my OB-GYN residency was in California, my hometown of Fresno, a branch of UCSF. And then my fellowship was in the Northeast, University of Connecticut.
Oh, nice. I actually went to med school at the University of Connecticut. So you were in Farmington?
In
Nice.
Farmington, that's right.
Small
Yes.
town.
Beautiful
Yeah, I was
campus.
there.
It is.
It is a beautiful campus. It's a beautiful old building, but they've maintained
Hmm.
it so well. Yeah,
Hmm.
okay, we have a lot in common. I didn't know that. Awesome. So, and then, okay, tell us your story. So, you, like many people, finished fellowship and you said you got your first job for a private firm that was owned by private equity, but you didn't really know what that meant at the time. So, what was your experience like there?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so when I finished fellowship, I was 31. I was still single. And so I knew I didn't want to go back to Fresno. It was a smaller town. I thought I would be single forever. So I knew I wanted to come to Florida because it was basically the gateway to South America. I could be closer to my parents' home country of Argentina. I could pop down there to see friends and family. And so I joined a group in the South Florida region. They were my first job out of training. And I do think the fellows now are coming out much more educated about this. There's just a lot more information about it. At the time, I knew nothing about what the different models were, what it meant to have a private equity or MSO involved in the organization. So I was with that practice for 3 years, 2015 to 2018. And then I decided to move home to Fresno and join the practice there, which is a physician-owned practice. And I was there for 5 years. But on my journey out to the West Coast, I actually met my now husband, and he moved out with me, but he was born and raised Florida. So he really wanted to come back. And after 5 years and two children, we said, okay, we're gonna make and one pandemic that also
Mm-hmm.
happened while we were out
Oh, yeah, and that.
there, and that. So we decided to make the move back, and yeah, so 2022 we started looking, and then made the move in 2023.
Okay, so still kind of post-pandemic days. We were out of it,
Yeah.
but still not totally
Yep.
back to normal, late 2022,
Yep.
2023.
Yep.
Although Florida was probably living more a normal life than California at that
Yes.
time.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And so, okay, so all these personal things are going on. You'd become a mom and a wife, and then on top of that, you were again looking for employed work because that's what you knew. But what happened?
Hmm. Yeah. So, I was sharing before we started recording. I actually never had an idea to start my own practice. That was, starting from scratch was never the plan. At the time of our move, my children were 3 years old and 18 months. And
Mhm.
so there was definitely no intention of doing that. But when I looked at the area and I looked at my options, most of the big practices in the area had been acquired by private equity in the time that I had been gone. And that was essentially a non-starter for me. And it really came down to um, I knew that I had so much more medicine left to practice. And I really wanted to be able to do it my way, if you will. Um, and I didn't really want to be restricted by any number of things. And I'm trying to keep it PC here, but
You don't
anyway,
have to keep it
very lot.
PC, but let's talk about no. Let's
But
break free from PC
yeah,
and let's talk about like what does it mean or what do you think are the big downsides to being a physician employed by a practice owned by private equity? Like there's different
yeah, for
constraints.
sure. For sure. And listen, now 3 years later, I don't know that this journey is for everyone, right? Like some people may choose not to. There's things that I wish I would have known, but for me, this was 100% the right decision. And at the end of the day, there was a few things that were pretty key for me. Number one was that pretty much if I did join one of these big practices outside of my exam room, I had very little control over the patient experience. So if the patient had a negative interaction with a nurse, if there was a mix up, you know, um, in instructions or whatever the case may be, whatever, good or bad, whatever it may be, I had no ability to impact that.
Hmm.
The second thing was that my employment was always going to be tied to productivity. And while that's important, right? Because at the end of the day, a business does have to be profitable. The more that you are able to earn, the more impact you're able to have. You need to be able to continue to grow and serve more people. I never wanted to have to practice medicine in a way that was not putting the patient first. And so what I mean by that is like not every patient needs in my particular field, not every patient needs IVF straight out the gates. Now, IVF is an amazing tool. I do a lot of it. And it's advanced immensely, even since the time that I was a fellow 10 years ago. Um, but I do believe we should look at the person as a whole. And I do believe that we should really be talking about, okay, what's your lifestyle? How's your sleep? What toxin exposures do we have that we can maybe optimize? Have you considered any other integrative practices like acupuncture and meditation? And, in our traditional sort of Western medicine, some of those things are still very frowned upon. And I don't think it's an either or, right? I think it's very much
Hmm.
how do we embrace all of these practices and look at the person as a whole to really treat them as a whole person and sort of optimize their likelihood for success so that they can achieve what they're coming to me for the fastest, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So now in your own business, obviously you have a lot more control over that. You were talking
Sure.
about productivity, and RVU based systems. I do agree. Like if you're running a business, I can understand that you need every physician to be essentially like seeing patients, right? Like there's a
Of
disincentive
course.
if the doctor gets
Of course.
paid whether there's a patient in the room or not. I get that. But I think
100%.
at the same time, there is this incorrect assumption, which is like kind of capitalism based, which is a business has to always be growing, but as an individual physician, you don't have to always be more productive year over year, right? I mean, if that were the case, then by year 20, you're going to be seeing what 50 patients a day, even if you start with 15 a day when you're like in year one,
Right.
right? Like it's kind
Right.
of unrealistic the natural pressure that's getting put on physicians in employed positions, whether they're hospital based or private equity based, when it is all based on like we have to make more money year over year always. Um,
Well, and I think, and I don't think we'll ever go back to the way medicine was before. But you talk to some of the docs that were in practice for 20, 30 years, and they had their private practice and everything was
mhm.
fine and they had their life and there was a natural growth, right? Like
Yeah.
eventually they got busy enough that they needed a second physician and then a third and et cetera. So there was growth, but it was a natural sort of growth. Whereas now you find that they are compressed down into these certain lifetime cycles because the way that the model works is that after a certain period, whether that's 3 years or 5 years or 7 years, right? Whatever that hold is, at the end of that hold is a sell to pay back the investors who made the
Mhm.
investment, the initial investment. That's just the model. It's not good or bad. So
Mhm.
when you have that model, you're compressing and you're pressurizing everything down into that window.
Right. You're forcing a growth that may not be a natural growth for a practice in a certain community. Yeah, I get it. Totally get it. So you went out and you did your own thing. You hung your own shingle, as you said. How scary was that? You said you self funded, you bootstrapped this.
Terrified. It was terrifying.
Especially with
Um,
two young kids. And I don't know if you're
yeah,
the sole breadwinner or primary breadwinner in your family. It's a lot of
I am.
pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of pressure. Yeah, I mean, to be 100% honest with you, a little bit of it was ignorance is bliss, right? You kind of don't know what you're getting into, and so you're like, yeah, this sounds good. Let's try that. And then another huge part of it was community, right? So having community, having support, having examples of people that were already doing it in other specialties, having some really critical mentors in my own specialty that were, willing to support and be supportive, which is really not common to be quite honest.
Mm.
So that community and having the ability to be vulnerable and to open up about the hard parts, right, of business ownership, which is not anything that I had ever experienced. I was a complete novice when it came to being a business owner. And not, it wasn't even that I acquired a practice or, bought someone or whatever. It was literally like, where do I buy an exam table? Googling like, where do I post to find a medical assistant? I mean, really from the most basic, simple things that we've never really had to think about.
So you mentioned having mentors. How did you find these mentors?
Yeah, great question. So I did business coaching, and in that business coaching community, there was just a few people who really had certain qualities as a leader and as a business owner. Some of them had the model that I was trying to replicate, some didn't, but each of them had qualities. And I was very intentional about seeking them out, seeking out their advice, um, really wanting to connect with them to see what had they done, right? What kind of crumbs had they left as clues along the way? And then in my own specialty in particular, there was one female physician who on the West Coast I had connected with, and she has just been just so amazing and so incredible. And I can't say enough wonderful things about how she has supported me in this adventure.
Call her out. Let's give her thanks. What's her name?
Dr. Amy Avazadeh, also known as the
Woohoo!
Egg Whisperer. Yeah, she
Also known as
is
what?
the Egg Whisperer.
The Ed
We
Whisperer?
The Egg Whisperer, yeah. So she's in
What does that
REI,
mean?
California,
Okay.
and so she just again just a really really soft place to land, phenomenal human being, who was really supportive as I was getting started, and now is on the advisory board for Sabo and just continues to be a resource for me
Amazing.
as I look to navigate this. Yeah,
I think what you're bringing up is so important. Like, yes, you are on your own when you start your own business, but it's a mistake to think that you should be doing everything yourself without seeking help and support because even if someone's only a little bit ahead of you, they, like we were talking about before we started recording, part of running your own business or being an entrepreneur is you are going to make mistakes. It's inevitable. So the more people who have done this a little bit ahead of you, years ahead of you, months ahead of you, whatever it is, who can tell you what mistakes they made and save you maybe the months or years or headaches of like making those mistakes yourself, it's priceless, right? And I think
definitely.
what's so wonderful is that somewhat surprisingly, especially coming from academics where I feel like there's not such a camaraderie, there's more of this competition mindset, like keep your cards close to your chest, right? Like don't share anything. In entrepreneurship, I think I've found many people being very open and generous with their knowledge. And it sounds like
Yeah.
having benefited from Amy's guidance, I'm sure you're going to do the same for people coming up behind you. So, yeah, I think that's super great advice to get a business coach, to call people, to ask basically, and you'll be surprised.
Yeah, and it takes a village. I mean, I am the face of Sabo, but you and I connected through Dr. Mona Sodi, who I met through the EntreMD Business School, and Dr. Una. And I always share that, without them, there is no Sabo. My brother now, who was not in the medical space at all, he came from a law background, small business world. He's now the business strategist and consultant for
Nice.
Sabo. So I think, yes, it's easy from the outside to look in and say, oh yeah, she did all this. And I did. I'm not trying to like, I did do that thing. I did that. But it really was a village of support. And then the only other 2 cents I will add to that is also be careful who you're listening to. Be selective about that because just in the same way that I had all of those people in my corner and all of those people rooting for me, the external messaging from so many of my colleagues was, don't do this, you're crazy, nobody starts a practice in today's in the healthcare space, Um, what are you thinking? You're going to be on call 24/7. You're never going to be on vacation. You're never going to be home for your kids. I had somebody say, yeah, we're just waiting for you to fail. I mean, like there was
Wow.
so much negative. So if I had chosen to listen to that, I never would have started. So be really careful about who you're shining your light to or being vulnerable with. That would be my only other piece of advice.
Well, that must have been really anxiety provoking, especially at the beginning, right? Here you are like risking everything and people are telling you you're stupid, don't do this. So,
Yeah.
how did you get past that? Like how did you have faith that your vision of this would not lead to a life that would burn you out where you never got to take vacation and you were on call 24/7 and you never saw your children? Like you had to have had a plan so
So,
that that wouldn't happen, right? Otherwise you wouldn't have been interested in working this hard.
so I wish I think about this because I get this question sometimes, and I wish that I had some like really inspiring thing to say. And what it really came down to is I was going to give myself a year. I had a year timeline. And if I could make it work, if I could see the light, then I would keep going. And if I couldn't, and if it was just like I was beating my head against the wall, then I was going to just close up shop and join one of the practices in the area because, at the end of the day, my family was the most important thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it was somewhere around probably like month 6-ish, somewhere in there, um, where I finally started to see, okay, I think there's something here, I think there's something here. And by the end of year one, I had paid back I had paid back the startup costs. And then on top of that, I had paid myself a 6-figure salary. So I knew
Amazing.
that I knew that we had something. Yeah, yeah.
So, what was the hardest part of those first 6 months looking back? I mean, obviously, Googling where do I buy exam tables is not fun, but
Yeah,
with
so
the
so I
internet, all
think
things are possible.
for sure. And the best way I can equate it to, right, is think about, your first year as a resident or your first year as a fellow or your first position in your first job when you're still kind of um, you're just unsure, right? And everything is new and you don't feel comfortable. And mind you, I at that point I had been in practice, you know, over 8 years, and so I was very confident in my clinical skills. I felt very, I always say treating patients is my zone of genius, right? That doctor patient interaction, I love that. I could do that all day. But the business side of medicine, I had zero knowledge. I had no idea what I was doing. So that was extremely anxiety provoking, extremely scary. And it took me probably about a year and a half to 2 years, somewhere last year. I don't remember, I can't give you an exact time, but somewhere last year, I started getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I just knew that that was just going to be part of the journey. And so
Mm.
my bounce back and I would say my resilience began to mature. Now, it's not like I'm fully evolved. I don't think we ever arrive, right? Um, and so as the systems break, you sort of have a little pity party and then you start to put them back together. But I definitely think it took me a while to shift out of that mindset of like I should already know this, I should already be expert at this, to just understanding that that's just going to be part of the equation forever. I mean, as long as I'm a business owner.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
that's
and
wait.
so
I want to
that
pause there because that's actually
oh
golden. We were talking before about how I think that belief that like once we've arrived, we do so much work and education and training. And so we have this idea that like once we arrive as attendings and we're masters of our trade, that we're going to get to this place where like it's easy and we're comfortable. And that is the sign that we've arrived, right? We've done it. And when you start something like a business, what you've realized, and you said it took you about a year and a half to kind of come to this mindset shift, it's a really important shift, is that there is no comfort in a business. Like you're either constantly growing and evolving or you're going to be dying in your business. Like you
yes.
can't just rest on your laurels and say, "Okay, I've figured it out. Like this is how you do this business no matter what it is, and this is how it's going to be forever," because that's not how it works. Like life is always changing, technology is always
Yep.
changing, the way people want things is always changing. So you have to become someone who's always being comfortable in the discomfort of learning new things to be a successful
Yep.
business owner, which is totally different than I think what we were told, and I don't think it's really necessarily true in traditional medicine either, because if you're really going to stay top of your field, you have to stay uncomfortable to some degree as
Continue
well
to
in terms of
evolve
learning,
for
yeah,
sure.
continuing education. But I still think subconsciously, I thought at least, like I would get to this place where like, oh, all this hard work will be worth it and I won't have to do that anymore. But then I found myself feeling really bored actually there, which is why I got into entrepreneurship. And maybe that was for you too. But so, and you also said like you had this idea of I'm going to give it a year. Psychologically, was that because it felt less scary to say it'll just be a year? Was it
Right.
because you had a nest egg that you knew would last at least a year? Like what was
No,
the, no.
it felt less final. Like there
Yeah.
wasn't the same finality to it. And so I was like, well, I'll give it a year. And if it doesn't work, I'll just go take a job I would have taken anyway. Right. So like
Yeah.
it made the decision less heavy, I think, as I was getting started.
Mona and I have talked about this too. So she's an obesity medicine and I'm a child psychiatrist. And we both kind of had in our minds the same thought in a different wording, which was like, you can always go back. We would tell ourselves, like, you can always go back to get a job somewhere. So if this doesn't work out, you always have that to rely on. It's that same like safety net, psychological safety net that I think helps you feel like it's a little bit less daunting to take on this
Yeah.
new thing,
Yeah, for
right?
sure. For
But
sure.
so how are you taking insurance?
No. So, and that was another part of the business, right? And like, so I have another coach, she's my life coach, and she says, Caroline, it's all just one big experiment, right? So you make a
Yeah.
decision. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you pivot and you make a different decision. Which also I think helps kind of remove some of the heaviness. But when I was deciding to open Sabo, I had to make a decision around what I wanted the business model to look like. And this comes from Dr. Una and Entree MD. And she's like, look, you know, the facts are facts. Like math is math. It's not emotional. It's not subjective.
Mm-hmm.
You either have a low ticket, high volume model, and that's fine. And so that would be an insurance based practice where you do high volume and you have insurance contracts, you get insurance reimbursement. And that's fine. That's not good or bad. That's just one model. Or you want to do, long patient visits, you want to have interaction with them at every appointment, et cetera, then you can't do that. So you can do a high ticket, low volume. And I use high ticket in air quotes because I think with today's insurance, most insurance plans, patients actually would pay less coming to see me. But that allowed me, it would, there was a pro and a con to that. So the benefit was that I was doing everything in the beginning, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to start leaner. And I'm not suggesting that that's the right way to do it. That was just the way that I chose to do it. And it allowed me to start leaner. But I really got to know every single patient, right?
Mm-hmm.
I developed a rapport. There was a lot of word of mouth in the beginning. Um, and but the downside to that was that there was a harder barrier to entry because when patients call to set up the appointment, oh, you don't take insurance? Okay, click buy, right?
Yeah.
So the concept of direct care or the concept of out of network, even just as early as 2 years ago, was still a very novel concept. Now I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a little bit more acceptance, and I do think, particularly in the South Florida region, there's more and more direct care doctors. But at the time, it was I vividly remember visiting OBGYN practices to ask for referrals. And as soon as I said I didn't take insurance, it was almost like, okay, the lights, you could see the lights go
Yeah.
out. So there was definitely a pro and a con to that. Would I do it differently? No. And the main reason for that is autonomy and
Mm-hmm.
being able to make decisions. That are the best decisions for my patients and practice medicine in a more personalized and tailored way. Um, and so I chose to do it that
Oh, you don't have to sell me on direct specialty care and direct primary care. I
way.
absolutely think it's the way to go. But I do think it does, like you're saying, it leads to you needing to have a whole new skill set, which is marketing
Hmm.
yourself. Because as
Hmm.
physicians, most of us have
Hmm.
worked in our training only in insurance based hospital systems where
Yep.
the demand far outstrips the supply. So you never have to learn about, marketing yourself. You just have to show up to work and your schedule is full. Then when you start your own practice and you're asking people to pay you because you're awesome and you're going to give them a really great experience, it's something that's like you're saying, it's new to the consumer, to the patient. They love it once they get in, but your way
That's right.
of getting the word out about your practice, I'm guessing you had to do a lot of work there. So what did you do? Did you run ads? Did you hit the streets? You knocked
My
on doors?
yeah,
Did you like
my
send
marketing budget
emails?
was zero.
Yeah, so you must have done a lot of work. I'm guessing that a lot of your
Yeah.
effort in those first months was
Yes.
probably like
Yes.
the getting the word out. What did you do?
Yeah. That's right. So tons and tons of local networking events, women's groups, the local chamber of commerce. I mean, you name it, I was in it in that first year. Tons and tons of local stuff. I can't even list all of them. But it was really about just growing visibility for the brand and trying
Hmm.
to also for me, right, refining my message around like why me
Yeah.
and why direct care. And I think there's also this misperception. I touched on this earlier, that when people hear boutique practice or direct care or out of network, oh, that's too expensive, I can't afford it.
Yeah.
When they actually, if they did price shopping, a lot of times those direct care specialists are either on par or less than what they would be paying if insurance doesn't cover at some of these other places. So I think it's really interesting. Um, it's just really interesting in terms of the consumer and their perception of what the care is, right? Or what the cost is going to be for that care. So there was a ton and ton of just footwork and in-person marketing, visiting referral partners. So I mentioned OBGYNs earlier, but visiting direct primary care specialists, so DPC, direct specialty care specialists, so DSC, integrative practitioners like acupuncturists and dietitians and therapists, and those people who already had, cash pay patients. It was an easier jump for that patient to then
Yeah,
come to me,
absolutely.
right?
Because that patient who's already seeing that person understands the value there.
Right, right, right.
Nice. That's really smart.
So yeah, and then building my Google business profile.
Yeah.
I really did not have any money for ads in the first year. So we now do Google ads, but we really that first 12 months, like there was zero marketing dollars. It was me. It was me and
And
my
for
time,
building that
right?
Google business profile, were you doing that manually? Like, did you print out the QR code and have it at the front desk and text it to people? Like, what
So
did you do?
yes, but also I literally went through because again, you've been in practice I was at that point 8 years. I had taken care of patients for 8 years. I went back through my, contact list in my phone, my Facebook Messenger, my DMs on Instagram, like every single patient that had ever reached out to me with a thank you or a picture of their kid. Hey, look, I'm opening my own practice. Would you mind writing a review? Here's the link, right? Because they're reviewing me as their
Mm-hmm.
provider, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was enormously helpful. And I will tell you, even now, probably about half of our new patients come from online searches, the Google reviews. I've had a few from ChatGPT now, from
Yeah.
AI
Yeah.
searches. So
No,
so
that's
yeah,
gold. What you
that
just
was
dropped is gold. So everybody who has a physical practice as a physician, especially if you're cash based because of the reasons we're talking about, this is a big part of your marketing. But the number one predictor of your SEO, which is essentially how you rank in Google, because pretty much everybody is searching on Google. We're talking about SEO, is your Google business profiles ranking, meaning how many reviews you have and the quality of those reviews. So if you're going to put any effort into marketing, as a local brick and mortar physician, that is, you did it absolutely right. Like that would be what I would tell people to do, which is like go through your personal network, get your friends, get your past patients, get everybody who knows and loves you to write you a glowing review. And then you as the business owner have to comment back. It's part of what we do at SuperDoc Tech is we
Mhm.
automate all of that because like making sure that that is happening automatically is the most valuable thing you can do. So many physicians start and they are like, they meet a marketer who says, "Oh, pay us $5,000 a year and we'll optimize your SEO," and it does nothing actually. So the hard work, it's not hard work, but the laborious work of like actually reaching out to your patient who sent a picture of the kid that you gave them, like that you made possible. That's wonderful, right? I'm sure it feels good to you to reach out to those people and it feels good to them to write you that review, but you still had to ask for it. It wouldn't have happened if some
Yep,
marketing company had just started your Google business profile and left it there for some magic to happen. You made that magic
that's right.
happen. Yeah.
That's right. And the other thing is, I'm in such a competitive market that
Mhm.
I could spend my entire salary on Google ads and I'm probably still not going to rank as high as some of the other ads. Like just the budgets that are going into it. And I don't know, you know more about the tech side, so I'd love to hear your feedback, but Google ads, we do spend a little on Google ads, but I have just not found it to really move the needle for me.
It will never move the needle. The return will never be the same as it will be for you with reaching out to people you already know who've already worked with you,
Yeah.
or the people you're now serving when you maximize that referral, right? When you
Yeah.
ask your current patients to send you the people they know, when you have a newsletter that goes out every week to everybody you've ever treated who remind and it stays top of mind for them to think of you
Yep.
the next time their friend is struggling with fertility issues. That's always going to pay off more than just a cold ad to someone who's never heard of you and is without any other knowledge weighing you against every other option in town. Like
Yep.
the yield is just never as high on ads. It still can be profitable. So you will get to a point where, a business will get to a point when it's grown and pretty much exhausted and maximized its referral network with the existing patients or existing customers. And then that's where ads do become really important. But the cost to acquire a new customer only goes up because you have to spend more. A person who has never heard of a business is going to need 6 to 17 touches from that business in an advertising kind of way before they decide to buy. And so
Yep.
it's just not going to be the same as if I was at coffee with a friend talking about my fertility struggles and she's like, you should go see Dr. Carolina. She really helped
Right.
us. Then I'm absolutely going to call you and want to
Right.
become your patient, right? But if I just Google it and you come up along with 5 other people, then it becomes like who answers the phone, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, such important points. So, but you've really maximized those things. So it started out just you? Like, did you really have no other staff when you started?
So I was, well, that's not entirely true. So my virtual assistant, Agustina, who is based in Argentina, started with me just doing like some social media stuff back when I was still living in California, very part-time, just kind of in hindsight, looking back, she was getting to know me, my voice, my brand. In my head, I was doing brand building, podcast interviews, that kind of stuff, et cetera, in the lead up or knowing that we were making the move to Florida. And then the night before my opening, the medical assistant who I had, was supposed to start with me, writes me an email. She got accepted to nursing school, and I can come in for the first week if you need me to. I said, no, don't bother. It's going to be more paperwork than it's worth. So we opened Sabo with me as the only in-person person,
Wow.
and Agustina as the remote virtual assistant. And she honestly is phenomenal. I don't know what I would do without her. She's been with me since, again, before Sabo opened. And then shortly thereafter, we brought in Shayla, who also phenomenal and stayed with me this entire time. She's now in nursing school, so we're excited for her. But I mean, for the first year, it was the three of us. I was the IVF nurse, the financial coordinator, the whatever ultrasound tech, I don't know, all the things that you could think of a fertility clinic. It was me, along with Shayla and Agustina, and then towards as we were concluding year one, we had an IVF coordinator join us, Sandra, who, and again, so like, and all these people have been with me the whole time, so they really have seen sort of the evolution of Sabo, and when we started, and we see one patient a week or two patients a week to what it is now. So that's been kind of cool to have that growth together.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds really like a natural growth, but it also sounds like it must have been pretty stressful at the beginning to go from being like welcoming the person who walks in the door, checking them in, escorting them to the room, and then becoming the doctor, putting on the gloves.
That's
And
right.
then coming
That's
back
right.
and like
And
faxing. I
again,
mean, I can't imagine you're doing all
yeah.
the things, but of course you can. We can
So
as doctors. We are used to doing
right.
all
And
those
so,
things.
what's fascinating, my brother said this to me as from a business strategy standpoint. And by the way, I just want to lead with like, I'm not suggesting that everyone do it my way, right? This was simply the way that I chose to do it. I had my reasons. Would I do it the same? Maybe, maybe not, but definitely it worked in the beginning for me. Um, and one of the things that he said to me is like, look, if all of your staff quit tomorrow, you can do every single thing in your business. Not that you would want to, and not that what you would ever want that to happen, of course, but like you can do the thing. If you own I don't know, a construction business, or if you own an HVAC business and your HVAC guy or your electrician or whoever doesn't show up for work, like you can't go solve that problem. In your own medical practice as the fertility specialist, you have now learned to do every step of the process from check in to check out. So again, not that you should or not that you would, but like that's pretty empowering, right?
Right.
In terms of, moving forward in the business.
No, there's definitely something beautiful about that as a small business owner, that story of like doing it all and then slowly replacing certain roles with other people. I think though, I can see what you're saying as well, that like, is it the best way? It's certainly not the only way to do it. You also can start a business. I mean, someone could start a fertility clinic without even being a fertility specialist or a physician, right? If you understand the business side of things, you can make that happen. You can understand who needs to be doing what. But the other way to do it is to build it from the ground up. And you're right. It's not that one's right and one's wrong. Um, it's a different organization though, because it's you. So your business really reflects you and your culture and your ethics and your reason for being. Like I'm sure in every person that you've hired and who's working with you, and they've chosen to stay with you because obviously they're aligned with you, and that's a beautiful thing. So you're not really viewing them necessarily as these interchangeable, disposable parts, but rather like
Definitely not.
integral
Yeah.
parts of your business. Yeah.
For sure, that are meant to
Well,
grow with the business. And I think, in my particular situation, as in the fertility space, to sort of build out a fertility clinic with all the medical personnel and all the roles that would be involved with that, to sort of build out the IVF lab, the procedure room, and all the personnel, all the certifications, et cetera, et cetera. Like there are ways, right? Some people take out a big loan and then you just have a loan payment and that's fine as long as you can generate enough revenue. So there are different models and different ways. I chose this way. This was for me, it felt the best and the most authentic, most aligned.
yeah. So if you could give yourself advice from your 2026 self back to your 2023 self, um, what things would you say? Is there anything you would tell her, don't do this or look out for this? Like what stands out in your mind?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. There's a lot of things. No, so I think probably number one, two, and three, like if there's one take home message, it would really be about mindset and mental toughness and resilience. And I think, I've learned with time that in the beginning, there were so many sleepless nights, there was so much anxiety, so many, all the little things I would, sweating the small stuff, if you will, which in the
Mm-hmm.
moment didn't feel small at all. And they felt huge. Looking back was not really a big deal. Right. And so I would have enjoyed the journey a lot more had I just understood that that was a part of the process and that mistakes are going to happen and that, as long as the patient is okay and as long as you're doing right by the patient and acting sort of in authenticity and in good faith that things will figure themselves out. So mindset, that definitely is number one, two, and three for me. Additional things that I probably would have liked to have done differently. I think I think just maybe, and again, it's sort of a mindset thing, right? Like more confidence in that it's going to work. Like there was so many, especially that first year, there was so many nights like, WTF, what did I do? Like, this is a disaster. What was I thinking? Et cetera, et cetera. Um, I think I would have paid more attention to the legal. And what I mean by that is just like all the paperwork and which you eventually get to, but you don't know what you don't know, right? So in
Mm-hmm.
hindsight, potentially hiring a consultant who has opened a fertility practice would have been a great, and I don't even know how you would look for that person, but maybe, now AI can help with that. But just not flying quite so blind. Like I think
Yeah.
if I would have had a little bit more in the way of checklists or protocols. I don't think any physician is afraid of hard work. I think we were built for
Right.
that by how we're trained. But I think just a little bit more in the way of information resources, and just kind of understanding what the next step should be would have been super helpful, and probably I would have been a little more proactive about that.
I'm guessing from you
um,
saying that something happened where you were like, oh shit, I wish I had known this? Like, is there something that happened that was
Yeah.
shocking for you or
So
that
in
you
my
regretted?
Yeah, yeah. So in my first year, we had, it was a very unfortunate incident, which I subsequently came to find out was very common, but we had a patient who basically came, did a whole lot of treatment, and then put it all on a credit card and then charged it all back. So
Mm,
we appealed it and lost. And it really wasn't, there was no, what's the right word I'm looking for? We did not lose because of anything that we had done wrong. Okay. So we had all the proper documentation and we uploaded that. What I later came to find out was that in the world of merchant processing, the people that makes these decisions 99% of the time are going to side with the client.
mm,
And despite the documentation that you may have, et cetera. But then you start worrying about lawsuits and, in the medical world, especially in
right.
Florida, being so litigious. So sort of the lesson in the moment, it was super painful. There was 3 months that were extremely painful. It wasn't just the money that was lost, but I also spent money, right, to deliver
Right.
those
Trying to recoup.
services that was
Hmm.
also lost, right?
Yeah.
So, but the lesson, like on the flip side of that, is we tightened up all of our systems and
Right.
processes. We became much stricter about, credit card use, credit card authorization, et cetera. Um, so it's all lessons, right? But in the moment, it was very painful. And I think there was a way that that could have been, had we had the tighter systems in the beginning, like potentially you would have minimized your exposure.
I think
Um,
that's it's such a great example though. Thank you for being vulnerable and like sharing that with me
yeah,
and with the
yeah,
listeners because it's a great example of something where like there's always going to be someone who behaves in a way that you never could have predicted.
yeah,
and
yep,
and even
yep,
if you hired a consultant who was like, "Oh, watch out for this. This is like a known scam that people do," or something like that. Even if there was that, there
yep,
still will be in the future some other new thing that
yes,
comes out and some new
yes,
way that someone's going to try to take advantage. Those people unfortunately
yes,
do exist. I'm so sorry that happened to you, but it can't be a reason or it shouldn't be a reason it, it wouldn't be a reason for someone who's going to be ultimately successful in business to avoid starting the business in the first place because again it's one of those
oh yeah,
inevitable
no,
things like at
right,
some
right,
point
right,
someone's going to screw you over
yes,
bounce a check take back their money on the credit
yes,
card fight you about
yes,
something and this happens wherever you are right if you're running an Airbnb they're going to claim something went wrong and they want a refund like it happens everywhere um, but you're right it's always the mindset shift that has to happen for that to become something that isn't both financially and emotionally devastating is to be able to say oh bummer what can I learn from this going forward
right,
so that that doesn't happen
right,
again without beating yourself up about it and feeling like I'm an
that's right,
idiot or something if you go to that place then continuing in the business becomes very painful if you turn it into a learning experience then actually it becomes kind of exciting because you're like oh what else can I learn from this like this is a
yeah,
worthy opponent, right? That's teaching me
yeah.
something.
So I definitely think, and can I just add one last thing?
Yeah.
Like, can I just say, trust your gut? Like, you're smarter than you know. Because I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times, especially when we're first starting, um, people see you as a physician, you're opening a practice, and they're like, oh, let me show you how it's done, or let me tell you how to do it, or let me whatever. And I think I'll speak for myself. I listened to a lot because I didn't want to miss anything, and I thought, oh well, I don't know what I'm doing. They must know what they're doing, and what you come to find out very quickly is number one, nobody knows what they're doing, and we're all figuring it out. And two is that most of the times they are not going to have your best interest at heart, right? They have their own agenda. Now, hopefully, that's a win-win, and hopefully there's an alignment, and you can both work together and collaborate. But more often than not, especially in that first year, I mean, I had probably if I had to guess, probably five investor groups come to me and say, "Oh, we'll help you. All you have to do is take care of patients. You don't have to worry about a thing. We'll let
Mm.
you focus on what you do best, et cetera, et cetera." Um, but there's no free lunch, right? One of my faculty at UConn used to say that there's no free lunch, Carolina. There's always something. So if you're gonna do it, that's fine, but just know that you're doing it and know what the cost is,
It
right?
must have been tempting though in your first year in those dark moments to call them up, but you didn't.
I didn't.
Nice.
No.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. If
Yeah,
anyone, I'm guessing, because you seem so open, like if there were someone who's starting a practice, whether it's a fertility practice or something else, if they wanted to reach out to you, would you be open to them emailing
for
you or reaching
sure.
out? Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yeah,
So I'll make sure that
absolutely.
we include in the show notes your email, and then what link do we want to put for SIBO?
You can put, well, so for Sabo, do the website,
Okay.
sabofertilitycenter.com, super easy. And then if they want to DM me on Instagram, I have my handle is DR, so Dr. Carolina Sweldo.
All right, awesome. So check out Dr. Carolina Sueldo on Instagram. Check out her website for her clinic and feel free to reach out to her if her story resonates with you and you would like her mentorship or guidance. Thank you so much for talking to our audience, Carolina.
Of course, thank you.